I'm going to give you a really quick overview of my startup, SignNow, and the story from founding through acquisition and beyond. So I'm Chris Hawkins. I was the CEO and co-founder when we were a standalone company, and now I'm a GM over at Barracuda, running the product as a standalone business unit. So before SignNow, I went to West Point. I was in the Army, so came from a pretty different background than maybe many of you, but maybe not. Would love to chat about that. But I was a technologist in high school, and when I left the Army, I really wanted to do about the polar opposite of that. And for me, that meant tech startups. I wasn't really smart enough to realize that most of the startups in 2008 were up here, and I really should have come up here. So instead, I went to my hometown of Orange County and began tech consulting. And I really built out a small practice there, working mostly with financial services firms, and I realized how much time that they spent and how many hours and how much pain was involved with just getting documents signed, managing documents, getting things notarized, cost firms, countless man hours, and I thought there was a real problem there, and I thought there was a real product opportunity. So when I was analyzing the space, I took a look at the market, adjacent markets, and dug even into the history and the law behind signatures, because I really wanted to know what I was getting into prior to doing it. So I ultimately compiled all those notes into a book, and it's the only book on signatures out there, mostly because it's an incredibly boring subject. So if you really have a glutton for punishment, you can pick this up. But it was really helpful for me to really understand the space and be seen as an expert in it generally. So essentially, the next thing we needed to do is, once we really validated that we wanted to do the space and we wanted to get into it, build out a prototype. I was definitely involved in the coding at that stage, and really we knew we were doing a B2B SaaS product, and to pull that off successfully, the bar is very high. And so we knew we had to raise money. We ultimately found a great partner in Coastal Ventures who backed us and helped us give our first round of funding and really coached me to be a good CEO. So we started working on really building out the team first. We recruited from all over the place. We actually found it to be pretty much of an advantage to be in a remote, sort of off the beaten path location, but still an hour flight from the Bay Area, which is nice. And we built our product with really two main things in mind. First was design, and so we really wanted, even like a little thing, like we wanted our signature to look the sexiest of any signature out there, because people really do care about their signature, and people spend hours in grade school trying to make that thing look good. So that mattered to us, and also mobile first. So we launched our first version of the product on the App Store in 2012, and that mobile first mentality was really a big success for us, because it really allowed us to rocket through the App Store, became the top ranked mobile e-signing platform relatively quickly. So obviously, being B2B SaaS, we had to charge at some point. So we launched the product, you could say, about for Q1, and then really we started trying to charge in May, and we really spent some time trying to figure out what was the right way to charge that was the best for our users and optimized for us as well. We didn't really get it right until about November. And then right around that point, we really hit this big elbow and inflection point. So as we started growing really, really fast, one of our customers, Barracuda Networks, reached out to us, and they shared a lot of passion around simple-to-use products that you can just take a normally complex IT solution and you just plug this thing in and make it simple. So we had a lot of similar sensibilities around that, and they said, hey, what do you think about the idea about joining forces? So myself and my co-founders, we sat around and we spent a lot of time thinking about the different pros and cons. We had grown pretty fast, so profitability was actually an option for us, which was pretty cool. That wasn't what we wanted to do, but obviously great to have that option. But we also looked at raising capital, and we had another round lined up, and we thought, well, there's a couple things with that. One, it raises the bar for success, and it makes it harder to have an exit where everybody can end up being happy with what just happened. And the other thing is execution risk. So in order to build a great company, you obviously have to build, and particularly B2B SaaS, for that next stage of growth, we're going to need to build out a big sales organization, build a brand, find a lot of new customer acquisition channels, all stuff that was very challenging, and not that we couldn't do it, but it all carried a certain amount of risk. So we sat around and we ultimately decided that we thought that the outcome with Barracuda was the right one. So the founders, we decided, we took it to the board, and the board agreed, and so we signed the deal with SignNow, of course. This is me with the CFO, David Fogno, and great outcome. So basically, we just celebrated, and then we got back to work. Something I didn't understand before, and I understand at least a little bit better now, is how much effort it is to make an acquisition successful. They fail a huge number of times, so I flew out the very next day up here to the Bay Area and started working on how we're going to integrate these companies. And essentially, that's where we are today, as we're trying to navigate this line between, hey, we want to integrate SignNow into Barracuda to get all the leverage in a lot of different ways. And in a lot of different ways, a sales and marketing organization that it wasn't necessarily designed from day one to fit into. So you don't want to do that so fast where you break everything, but you don't want to never integrate at all because then you get no leverage. And so that's essentially the glide path that we're along today. So like I said, this would be very short, and hopefully it was. So if anybody has any questions, always feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or see Hawkins at SignNow, and you can reach me anytime. Thanks, everybody.